In this lecture, we want to highlight and share some of the tools we use in order to communicate our structures to our students. There are many methodologies one can use to communicate these. We can use stories, analogies, metaphors, exercises, examples, and models to mention perhaps the most common ones within the dance context. Here, we will use examples and we will build models in order to illustrate how we think about which methodologies to choose when. Once you understand the concept, we believe you'll have a clearer understanding of how to adapt it to any of the other methodologies you like to use. So let's start with using examples. It's rather straightforward and a great way to let your students explore different structures. Examples can come in the form of a selection of moves, choreographies, or sequences of moves, or pieces of music that highlight something specific we like to play with as dancers. You can make these examples be random or follow specific progressions. Picking examples randomly can have the benefit that it can feel natural for the teacher. This is because we can simply pick a combination movement that flows naturally to us. This saves planning time and examples can be very enjoyable to execute for our students. When selecting examples to follow a specific progression, it's very common to list the steps or concepts in order of difficulty, and then just teach one after the other. This can also work really well, especially for dances in which people think a lot in terms of steps and moves. If you have a lot of names of steps in your dance and perhaps even focus a lot on combining these steps into choreography, then using examples can be a good way of selecting your content. But as we dig deeper into how our students form their mental representation of the dance, you'll notice that there are some important downsides to working with examples, because examples, chosen randomly or following a progression, are coming from our mental model which students don't have access to. For us, we have clear dots connecting these examples to each other. We know exactly how one is related to the other. However, our students don't have that mental model and don't have the same connections between the dots. This means that each student will form a mental representation that looks very different from ours and also different from each other. Consequently, down the line, this makes it harder and harder to feel aligned about what the dance is. You'll frequently be confronted with a lot of resistance from your students whenever you want to go deeper into an aspect of the dance you'll find important, but your students prefer to work on something else. This is something we will return to in Lecture 6. For now, we want to just say that it is possible to make effective use of examples by choosing them wisely from many areas across your mental model. Some masters and mentors of their dance forms are amazing at transmitting their mental model to generations of students without ever constructing models. However, it can be a tricky thing to do. This is why we typically suggest that one should start with using models in the earliest stages where we are helping our students create new mental representations. This could be for our beginner students or when introducing new ideas, and then reserve examples for later stages where it's about refining a student's mental representation. But before we look at how you can build models from your mental models, let's just clarify the distinction between these two words. When we refer to mental model, we are referring to the accessible ideas of what we believe we do as dancers. And when we just say model, we mean only one component or idea of how we think about the dance. Using models to explain our mental model allows us to chunk down our understanding of the dance into smaller bits that can be better explained and communicated without making everything overly complex in the learning process. One way to understand how to make models is to use specific combinations of examples chosen in such a way that our students can derive additional understanding from them. For instance, imagine a situation in which you teach your students 3 new moves and then ask them what they think these 3 moves have in common. This process invites them to transfer the understanding they have formed from these 3 moves into creating a 4th move by themselves. This way of sharing linked examples is one way of introducing our students to a model we've built. Another method we use a lot is to pick examples that contrast each other in a way that it helps our students gain a deeper understanding of how to be clear about their movements as dancers. We have an entire lesson just on this concept in our online program over at swingstep.com/teacher. And of course, we'd love it if you check that out as well. By the way, included in our online program are both live group sessions and one-on-one sessions so that we can work together to implement these ideas into your classes effectively. Now, coming back to the models. We can also directly share our models with our students, verbalizing it and creating drills based on it, and then presenting examples as applications of the model. The bigger purpose of sharing models is that it allows our students to form mental models of their own, and it helps them independently explore what the dance has to offer. With the models, our students can more quickly and reliably create links between examples and acquire and refine skills while gaining an understanding of the greater context. A good model has specific functions that predictably work, but it also has known limitations that you need to take into consideration when working with them. For example, if it just allows us to geek out for a moment, in physics, at larger scales, we apply the laws of gravity, and using the specific equations describe those laws to make predictions. But at quantum scales, we need to apply different laws. Both are acceptable models and help you achieve specific goals, but their limitations are clearly defined. Eventually, coming back to what we were mentioning earlier, once our students have learned enough models from us to have a mental model that begins to approach our own for the area of the dance we are working on, we can feel free to use examples again. Even randomly chosen examples at this point can have great value. They add fun and variety to the training. They can be used as a callback to remind students of previously learned skills. They help form a deeper integration and understanding of how the model is connected to form the larger mental model. We believe a healthy way of thinking about models is that they act as a scaffold to help you communicate an idea you have, but with the intention of being removed once the idea is transferred. With this intention in mind, we need to be very deliberate about how we choose to communicate our models with our students. We want them to understand that it is a scaffold, and the ultimate goal is not to require the model, but only to use it in a way to create a mental representation and form a deeper relationship with the dance. Having this said, it is an incredibly potent tool to pass on our knowledge to our students. This is why in the next video, we will take you through a step-by-step process on how to create models. All right, I'll see you there.